It was one of those great evenings when the city seemed to swallow its own heartbeat, the kind of day where the drizzle paints shadows on the pavement and people move faster than usual, heads bowed, eyes glued to the ground, desperate to get home. In the corner of a convenience store that smelled faintly of cheap coffee and bleach, two small figures stood frozen, their hands trembling as they clutched a chocolate bar between them. They were twins, so thin, hollow-eyed, no older than 9 or 10, and right now, they were caught. The cashier's voice sliced through the air like broken glass. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" His shout startled everyone in the shop. Heads turned, footsteps halted, and in that instant, the entire world seemed to zero in on the two children holding a single KitKat. Their clothes were ragged, their hair matted, their faces pale and streaked with grime. They didn't say a word, they just stared at the floor, as if silence could erase the evidence of hunger trembling in their hands. The store grew heavier with judgment. Some customers whispered, others shook their heads, and one woman even muttered, "Thieves, a broken bar at this age? Unbelievable." But then, from the back of the line, a voice broke through. It wasn't loud, it wasn't harsh, it was weary yet warm, like an old violin playing the softest note. "Leave them be." All eyes turned to him. An elderly man, perhaps in his 70s, shuffled forward with the careful steps of someone whose bones had long ago learned the weight of time. His coat was faded, his shoes scuffed, but his eyes carried a gentle light, the kind of light that belongs to those who have known pain and still choose kindness. He looked at the cashier, then at the children, and reached into his pocket. His hands shook, and not out of fear, but out of age. Slowly, he placed a few coins and a crumpled bill on the counter. "I'll pay for it," he said softly. The cashier frowned. "Sir, they tried to steal it." "I know," the old man interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "But no child steals out of greed when their ribs show through their shirt. This isn't mischief, this is hunger." Silence fell again, thicker this time, not with judgment but with something else, shame. The customers avoided his gaze, the whispers died, and the store seemed to shrink into stillness. The twins stood frozen, eyes wide, as though they couldn't comprehend what was happening. The old man took the KitKat from their trembling hands, paid for it, and gently placed it back in their palms. "Go on," he said, his voice cracking with both kindness and sorrow. "Eat. You don't need to steal food, children, not when someone can't help." The girls' eyes filled with tears first, and then the boys followed. They tore the wrapper open, their fingers fumbling, and in the middle of that convenience store, they broke the chocolate in half and shared it silently, devouring each bite as though it were the first real meal they'd had in days. People watched, some uncomfortable, others moved, but no one dared to speak. The old man stood beside them, not touching, not prying, just a broken bar present. When they finished, the boy whispered, barely audible, "Thank you, sir." And the girl added, "We didn't mean to a broken bar, we just haven't eaten since yesterday." The old man nodded slowly, his heart clenched at their words. Memories flashing before him of his own childhood, of nights when his stomach ached with emptiness, of the mother who worked herself to exhaustion just to feed him. He knew that kind of hunger, the one that gnaws not only at the belly but at the soul. "What's your name, son?" he asked gently. The boy hesitated, glancing at his sister. "Daniel," he whispered. "And this is Emma." "Daniel and Emma," the old man repeated, as though committing it to memory. "My name is Walter." From that moment, something invisible yet powerful wove itself between Emma and unspoken thread of fate. Walter didn't know then how much these children would change his life, and Daniel and Emma didn't know that the stranger who stood between them and Sham would become more than just rescuer. But as Walter walked them out of the store, his hand hovering protectively behind them, there was a shift in the air, a quiet promise of something greater. Outside, the drizzle had become a steady rain, and Walter offered them his worn umbrella. He didn't have much, but what he had, he gave. That's who he was. And though he lived alone in a small, dusty apartment with peeling wallpaper and memories louder than the ticking clock on his wall, that night, for the first time in years, Walter didn't feel alone. He walked home with the story etched into his heart up, and he had no idea that this act of kindness would return to him in ways he could never imagine. The night after meeting the twins, Walter sat in his tiny apartment, staring at the ticking clock on his wall. The silence of the room pressed heavily on him. The walls were lined with memorabilia, a photo of his late wife in a wooden frame, a pair of slippers she used to wear tucked beneath the bed, her teacup still sitting on the shelf as if she might walk through the door at any moment. It had been 7 years since she passed. But grief doesn't follow calendars, it lingers, curling itself around every corner of the home. Walter lived quietly, his days measured by the sound of the kettle boiling and the shuffle of newspapers being delivered outside his door. But tonight felt different. For the first time in years, he felt less invisible. The small voices of Daniel and Emma echoed in his mind, the way they had whispered thank you, the way their eyes softened when he said his name. He wondered where they had gone after he left them at the corner. He wondered if they had a safe place to sleep. He wondered if anyone was looking out for them at all. And though he tried to sleep, he couldn't shake the image of two small hands clutching a chocolate bar as if it were treasure. The next morning, Walter found himself taking the long route past the convenience store again. He wasn't sure why, a habit, maybe, or hope. His cane tapped against the pavement, his steps slow, and just as he was about to cross the street, he heard it, faint laughter. He turned his head, and there they were, Daniel and Emma, sitting on the curb, their arms wrapped around each other, trying to stay warm in the cool morning air. Their clothes were still ragged, their hair uncombed, but their faces lit up when they saw him. "Mr. Walter," Emma cried, jumping to her feet. She ran to him, clutching his sleeve as though she'd known him forever. Daniel followed more cautiously, his eyes always scanning, always guarded, like a boy who had learned too young to protect his sister. Walter felt his chest tighten. Children should not have to carry that kind of weight. "What are you two doing here?" he asked gently. Daniel shrugged. "Nowhere else to go," he said. Walter hesitated. He didn't have much. His pension barely covered his rent and groceries. But he looked at them, shivering in the wind, and he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Come with me," he said finally. Their eyes widened, unsure if they should trust him. But Emma grabbed her brother's hand. "Please, Daniel, he's kind," she whispered. And so they followed. Walter's apartment was small, with peeling wallpaper and furniture that had seen better days, but to Daniel and Emma, it felt like a palace. Walter made them warm soup with the few vegetables he had left in his fridge. The twins ate hungrily, spoon after spoon, until their bowls were empty. Then Emma curled up on the couch with the blanket Walter had kept folded neatly since his wife's passing, and Daniel sat stiffly in the armchair, still cautious, still watching. Walter sat across from them, his tea steaming in his hands, and for the first time in years, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt alive.